InSight OnSite is sponsored by Golden Rulism Ambassadors Craig and Sherry Klein.
My name is Jimmy Jones. I'm the Executive Director of the Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Agency. We serve primarily Marion and Polk, but up to 11 counties in certain areas. We provide resources and services for about 60,000 people a year that are in poverty in our broader community.
Arches Day Center really is, yes, it's very successful. It is the tip of the spear, if you will. It's the lowest barrier thing that we run. It doesn't matter if you walk in off the street, you don't want to give your real name, you don't want a meal, you don't want laundry, you just want to sit, or you want a meal, or you want laundry. You get to, it's a sort of a choose your own adventure kind of a location, right? You get to walk in, be who you are. You can bring your pet in, you can bring your spouse in. It's really the most basic thing that we do, which is keeping people alive. Right? When we talk about the rest of our programs, these are overnight shelters with case management, long-term housing stability, long-term housing goals. The day center is literally there, as well as our outreach, is there to literally meet basic needs to keep people alive. And that's what the day center does. We provide meals, we provide showers, we provide a safe space, we provide resource navigation, mail services, which is critical. A lot of people don't realize that without mail service, you can't get your ID, you can't get your checks, you can't get your SSDI, you can't get applications mailed to you, you can't get apartment complexes emailing things to you. I mean, think about wandering around the street without a way to get mail. How would you do any business at all? So providing mailboxes is a critical component that most of the homeless population doesn't have.
Yeah, you can think of it really as the most front line of the front line, right? Because these are folks that are coming in, and at the end of the day, they're having to go back out, right? So they're going to be really still dealing with the kind of the trauma of being unhoused, but having a place that's safe, having a place that where we have over 300 people a day that come in and engage in whether it's getting a meal, whether it's a shower or laundry, or even just this is, at least for this time, I have a safe place to be. And that's huge. And that is that first point of contact, right? It's the first opportunity they have to be like, I think I can trust these people. And sometimes that can take a little bit of time, but then from there, we can see them, start making those choices for themselves and decide that they want to engage. And as they do that, then that's opportunity for shelter. That's opportunity to get connected to other resources in the community, not just what we offer. And when that happens, then that's when the ball starts rolling for them. But they have to have some touch point to come to and feel like they're being cared for. Because beyond that, otherwise they're just still in that mode of I've got to protect myself, I've got to just survive. And so again, it's a place that provides that kind of life-saving stuff, but it's also beginning, I think, the life-building stuff as well.
So the Navigation Center is a 75-bed congregate shelter where we serve both men and women along with their pets and their spouses and everything they bring along with them. And it's a little bit different than the rest of our shelters in the sense that it is one big room where everybody sleeps together, right? We have females on one side, we have males on another side. It's very unique in that the rest of our shelters are very individualized. They have specific rooms, specific beds, and here they have their own beds, but they sleep in one room together. They're more likely to get to know each other as a community. They room as a community, they eat as a community. They're able to congregate in a way that the rest of the facilities aren't, which provides a unique opportunity for them to grow, but also obviously becomes a unique opportunity for resiliency and the way they build strength and they build tolerance within the community, which ultimately is a good thing because they're gonna have to go out into the community and learn to deal with people. And so the Navigation Center, really we think of more of like a train station, right? It's supposed to be very short term. Nationally, the model is short term. It's supposed to be 90 days in and out. It's not like a true drop-in emergency shelter where they sign up every day at 4 o'clock, hope they get a bed. The bed is assigned to them and they get case management. We have JD Health and Wellness that comes in and provides supportive services, and we have Marion County that comes in. The other thing that's really unique to the Navigation Center is of those 75 beds, 60 of them are what we call traditional shelter beds, but 15 of them are what we call diversion beds. Those 15 diversion beds are for law enforcement and Marion County Mental Health to drop people. And those are very specific short-term prescribed beds. And those get to be determined, the length of those get to be determined by the law enforcement officer or the behavioral health person that does the referral, essentially. So if a law enforcement officer says, hey, we want one of these diversion beds, we want them for 2 weeks because they have a treatment bed in 2 weeks. And so we're just trying to keep them stable for 2 weeks until they go to their treatment bed. They go into what we call a diversion bed. And that is different than the original 60. I think the biggest thing that people don't understand about the homeless is that they are everybody's neighbor, right? They're your mom, they're your cousin. They are most of us are one unfortunate incident away from homelessness, right? One paycheck, one lost job, one broken foot, one COVID experience, one fire, one flood away from being homeless ourselves. The majority of the country lives that way. And so I think as a community, we tend to other the homeless, right? They're all mentally ill, they're all on drugs, they're all this, they're all that. And the truth is that we're seeing an incredible amount of homeless these days that are just baby boomers that were priced out of the market. People who lived for years on their pension and they just can't afford their apartments anymore. People who were dual income and they were okay as dual income and then they lost their spouse and now they can't afford to live anymore in their apartments. I mean, just an exorbitant amount of people who are homeless for the first time. And it's very terrifying for them, right? It's very scary. These are people that are our parents' age, they're our grandparents' age, and all of a sudden they find themselves living in a car that is breaking down because it's probably 25 years old, and they have nowhere else to go. And I think that's the side of the homeless population that people don't see, this post-baby boomer generation that is not quite sick enough for assisted living, but not quite well enough to be on their own, right? There's a huge population right now that we're seeing in that.
Just to kind of dovetail with that, I mean, yeah, we're seeing an incredible increase in that population that skews older. And then of course we've got our population that's been chronically homeless. With every passing year, they get older and more needs. But I think one of the things that conversations I have all the time when we talk about the homeless, right, is that it's monolithic, right? And as we've been already talking about, there's 1,000 different stories for 1,000 different folks that are unhoused. And you know, when we think about, well, we just need a panacea, we just need, what is the one thing we need to do to solve everything? It's not realistic because we have maybe 1,000 paths into homelessness. Well, we're gonna need maybe not 1,000 out, but we're gonna need more than one or two things to get folks going from being unhoused into stability and self-sufficiency and to be permanently housed again.
Our agency long ago, 10 years ago, basically decided we wanted to build, in addition to supporting an external continuum of all different options for low-income folks in our community, we also wanted to develop an internal continuum so that our clients would have shelter opportunities. So today we have 354 full-time shelter beds, could have 500 in an emergency situation. We have housing placements for people who are homeless, and that's for veterans and families and just about every sort of subpopulation that you can describe. We've been working with the Salem Housing Authority very closely for years in supportive housing, so we provide supportive housing work at Yaquina, at Redwood Crossings, at Sequoia. We work with Dev Northwest on another project, so we've been providing supportive services with a lot of these permanent housing opportunities. And the next development there is, in addition to that work, we're also beginning to acquire and plan to build in future affordable housing of our own. And back in February, we purchased a 10-unit apartment complex, former Oxford Apartments. We're going to rename those sometime in the near future. And that's the first affordable housing units that we've owned. Later this summer, we're going to close on another property where we plan to build about 100 units of affordable housing. We're also, at the request of our partners, getting more involved in food operations because it's a hungry community, right? It's a hungry community. And so we got a lot of big plans for the future to build out more affordable housing options, especially for ones that we can connect to clients that may have struggled to get access to some of the previous opportunities.
Yeah, we have some programs in town that are really phenomenal that do very different things that we do. We run a veteran shelter, like I said, very low barrier. We're not clean and sober. We allow spouses, we allow pets. There are other veteran programs in town that are clean and sober. They drug test, they breathalyze, they don't allow spouses. It's very regimented, but that works for the population that is served in that shelter, right? It doesn't make that program wrong. It makes it different than ours, but there is a population of veterans that wants to thrive in that environment versus our environment. You know, when you talk about leveraging resources, we talk about vet court, right? Vet court very specifically is processing veterans who have gone through DUIs, who have gone through the criminal justice system, and their parole or probation requires that they go into a clean and sober living facility. That's not ours. We are not a clean and sober living facility. So they go to this other program stabilizes them, get them housed. No door is the wrong door. It's just the door that fits you best. And so no program is the wrong program. This just happens to be the model that we run.
We are seeing more government and nonprofit provider cooperation and collaboration and alignment than we have ever seen in the history of the issue, especially here in Oregon. Mission-based entities are sort of looking at sort of broader public policy problems more than they ever have before, see themselves as not just serving their clients, but being collectively responsible for all those same folks in need in the community. And we don't have the resources to, address 100% of the problem, but we are working in concert to a degree to which it would have been surprising in this community a decade ago. So there is more alignment and more collaboration than at any time in the history, and the state has helped with that by setting clear policy objectives. If you want this amount of money, these are the outcomes that we expect you to achieve with it, right? If you're going to put somebody into housing, we want to know what percentage of those folks are still in housing 6 months, a year after the financial assistance has been withdrawn. Because what good does it do any of us to put somebody into housing? I mean, it does the person a lot of good in that moment. But then if they can't sustain in that housing, if they become homeless again in 24 months, then one way of looking at that is it was a set of wasted resources from the public's perspective. So we want the interventions that we take to be lasting, to be permanent, to be successful. So the things that give me hope are that greater alignment than we've seen in the past. I also think, despite a lot of the public criticism of the work, this noise around this concept of the homeless industrial complex, that somehow, some way that, the organizations are getting rich off of this problem and they don't have they have a financial interest, in fact, not to solve it. I think that's mostly nonsense. I would love nothing better than to shut the agency down and declare victory and spend time, letting my dogs herd sheep. That is what I really want to do with my life. But until we get to a point that, we can begin to do that, we got some work to do. And I think generally the public has been very supportive beyond some of the, loud criticism we've heard recently about, the homeless issue. They've generally been very supportive. There's great empathy in Salem. There's great compassion. There's love for our fellow man. There is a sense of collective responsibility. And even among the critics of, the system, there is a shared set of values with the providers and others that we want Salem to be a better Salem. We want economic investment, we want prosperity, we want jobs, we want a richer and healthier and more vibrant community that isn't plagued by some of the problems that we have. So I think there's a lot out there to take heart from.
Trust is key in the work that we do. If we don't have trust, we really don't have anything. Because if people don't walk in our front door and they don't trust that we're going to do the things that we were going to say, and they don't trust that we're going to do our best to keep them safe, right? We can't solve all their problems, but we can do the things that we've committed to do. And if they can trust us to do that, then maybe they can trust us to do the next thing and the next thing, right? And maybe someday they go, from street to apartment to owning a house. We have a veteran right now who was literally street homeless. We brought him in from the street. He got services at the day center. He then went to the navigation center. He eventually went to our veteran shelter, which is the Arches Lodge, and he just bought a house. He is fully employed. He bought a house through the VA with a VA loan, and that wouldn't have happened had we not built the rapport and got him in the front door.
Yeah, seeing people go from street homelessness to home ownership, that's a pretty high bar, but getting folks into permanent housing, that is something that we do at a regular rate. And sometimes it's just the small steps, right? It's the having someone, once they start trusting, they start, then following through with just overcoming the small barriers, right? They need their ID, they need to get maybe connected to healthcare, get connected to behavioral health and all of these things, and they start making those little steps and they build on those things, because it's not just a one step from like, well, I'm unhoused to housed, right? There are all sorts of these little steps, and so and this is, again, as Sarah was talking about, this is where we build the trust, because we're with them in those steps, and that it's just a step along the way, but then they start really developing kind of ownership of their own story and of their own progress, and that's huge, because when you're just out on the street, everything's reactive, right? You're always just in crisis mode. You're always just kind of on the defensive, and you don't have that ability to look ahead to really plan or what goals. Well, the only goals I have today, I need to eat and I need to be safe, right? But once you get into a situation where you're stable and you have those supports, and then now you can be thinking, well, what goals can I set for myself beyond just today? And then that's when we really see that progress happen.
I think that so much of the homeless population feels like they're not seen, that they are so othered by the community that they no longer have any value. And when we talk about what this agency does well, I think we really provide the support and the messaging to really treat everybody as though they do have infinite worth, because they do. It doesn't really matter where you came from, right? When we circle back around to the shelter motto of you come as you are, it doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter if you're clean, doesn't matter if you're sober, doesn't matter if you have mental health, doesn't matter if you have incarceration in your history. We want to serve you as you are, and you are great just the way you are. It doesn't mean we don't help you develop, doesn't mean we don't help you better, just like everybody else. I certainly have things to work on. Andrew has things to work on. Nobody's perfect. But when you walk in these doors, we're going to value you as you are as you walk in these doors, right? And we really believe that people are the expert in their own lives, right? I am not the expert in your life. I am not the expert in anyone else's lives. You are. And I don't have to agree with your choices. I don't have to agree with your case plan. You really get to choose what the next steps are for you, because I haven't walked in your shoes. I don't know where you've come from. I don't know where you're going. And it's my job to walk alongside you and to really help you see that in yourself, right?
Yeah, I think when you're trying to define an infinite worth in a person, we tend to see people kind of transactionally. Right, what is your value to me, right? As far as what am I getting from you and what are you getting from me, and rather than really seeing someone as being valuable just because they exist, because they are, they have a uniqueness and a value, something that they bring to the world that is probably unknown and untapped. An encouragement that I give to our day center staff. Because we've already talked about how difficult that work is, right? I tell them that their job, and this is where I might get emotional because every time I talk about this story I do, but this analogy, this idea of tending a garden, and you don't always necessarily see the fruit, right? Because maybe with all the folks you serve, because we talk about 800 plus individuals that might come through the day center in a month, maybe they came in once, then they got a meal. Just one touch point. And so for the work that they do, they are tending this garden and caring for all the folks that come through. And you don't necessarily see that they get into shelter or housing or treatment, or even that they were able to set up their mailbox and start receiving their SSDI checks or whatever that happens to be. But what they do is so valuable because if you're not tending the garden, then there won't be fruit.
The person that comes to mind the most when you talk about examples of how we're being successful is I worked with a veteran for years. He was in and out of shelters, our shelters, other people's shelters. He was not clean and sober. He really fought to get in and out of treatment, and we gave him another chance. And he had been in our shelters probably 3 or 4 times. And he finally got into treatment. He was finally successful. He had gone through years and years of being suicidal, lots of ideation and lots of attempts, right? And he finally came out the other side clean and sober. And it took probably, I'm gonna say 6 tries between us and other organizations to get him there. And not only did he get clean and sober, he became a sponsor, he became a mentor. He went on to get his VA benefits. He was 100% disability rated through the VA and ended up getting almost $4,000 a month in his VA rating. And all of that drug and alcohol use was a coping strategy for the trauma that he experienced in the military. And he ended up coming through the end very successful, very positive. He looked like a completely different person in the end. And he looked at me dead in the face and he said, had it not been for the fact that you guys gave us an additional, or you guys gave me an additional shot, I'd be dead by now. Because he really felt like he had nowhere else to go. And we hear these stories daily, and I know it sounds very sensationalized for those that aren't in the work, right? But really, these are the stories we hear on a daily basis. We had another veteran, this is an Iraq-Afghanistan Marine who had deployed, I think, 4 or 5 times, and he really struggled with high instances of just acute trauma responses, right, just across the board. And he ended up being diagnosed with bipolar disorder and extreme trauma. It's probably some of the worst PTSD I had seen in my career. And in and out of treatment, in and out of our facilities. And he would get along well enough to get an apartment, and then he would get kicked out of the apartment for non-payment. He was coping not only for drugs and alcohol, but through his gambling as well. And this day, if you talk to him today, he is now living in Idaho, married, with kids, running his own treatment program with a clinical license, and he has started his own private practice to help veterans get into their own treatment, and they're doing his own work, right? And this is a veteran we worked with for probably 10 years. So I think a lot of people are quick to dismiss people. Well, we gave them a shot and they blew it, or we gave them a shot and they didn't take what we needed them to take. And the truth is that success isn't linear. Success is, like Andrew said, we have 1,000 people that come in through our door. There's 1,000 outcomes. There's 1,000 stories of success. And in this particular client, a lot of organizations would have thrown him away and said, we're not helping you a 5th time, right? We're not letting you come into our shelter again. You had your shot and we're gonna move you on. But now I know from a fact, because he just he sends me emails all the time. He is helping hundreds of veterans in Idaho become stable, get off drugs and alcohol, go to treatment. So you never know what success looks like for that particular veteran. And like Andrew said, we don't always see the success. And this is a really great example of when I'm having a bad day and I think, what sort of movement am I making in this population, in this community? I can look back at him and I get a random text message with a scripture or a quote or something that says what he's doing for the day, and I think, okay, this is why we do what we do, right? Because not only did we help him, and that's one person that we helped, but what are the hundreds that he's helping? And then of those veterans that he's helping, who are the hundreds that they're helping, right? And it truly is this ripple effect across the nation.
It's been the most fulfilling thing in my life because it's given me the opportunity to find people who are suffering and in need, and in a lot of cases there aren't a whole lot of solutions, and to give them hope, give them opportunity, give them a chance so that they can get some stability, that they can enjoy their life, that they can contribute to the community, and that their children and grandchildren. That's the thing about this work, is that there are knock-on consequences that echo down through generations that you don't anticipate how it will turn out. So that's a way to continue to be productive and giving long after we've left this earth. And I think a lot of the opportunity that I've had in many ways is sort of designed toward, led toward making sure that the next generation to come, my children's generation, my grandchildren's generation, has an opportunity to grow up in a Salem that's healthy and that's vibrant, and that they have opportunity in their lives.
Learn more about Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Agency at mwvcaa.org. Thank you for joining us on InSight OnSite. I'm Wendy Brokaw. InSight OnSite is sponsored by Golden Ruleism Ambassadors Craig and Sherry Klein.